From bitter to better, growing a new family tree. Anyone can become bitter. Yes, it creeps into our lives so slowly that we don't even realize it. So, what can you do if this happens to you? Find out in this simple but true story about how to heal a bitter heart. There once was a bitter seed. That grew into a bitter tree. And eventually produced bitter fruit. When the strong winds came, it blew on the tree, causing its fruit to fall. When the fruit landed on the ground, it broke open, and out popped another bitter seed. The bitter seed began to walk, looking for a new place to plant itself, because that is what seeds do. As the bitter seed was walking, it met up with an ant. The ant kindly greeted the bitter seed, but the bitter seed just yelled at the ant and continued on its way. While on its journey, the seed passed a rock. On top of the rock was a snail. The snail gave a warm smile and said hello to the bitter seed. But being so bitter, the seed stuck its tongue at the snail. This made the snail feel sad. On walked the seed, looking for a new place to grow. Now as the bitter seed traveled on, it started to complain out loud. It said, "Why do I have to walk so far? Why does it feel so hot? And why does everyone I meet seem so happy and cheerful? Is there something wrong with them?" All of a sudden, a voice from above said no. In shock, the bitter seed looked around, wondering who had spoken. Then the voice said again, "No, there is nothing wrong with them." Finally, the seed looked up, and there on the branch was an owl who was speaking. When the bitter seed saw who it was, he went back to his bitter attitude and said to the owl, "Why don't you mind your own business?" The owl answered, "Okay, but I'd like to know where you're going." The bitter seed didn't feel like talking, but snapped back an answer anyway. "I'm going to find a place to plant myself and grow, if that's okay with you." The owl saw through the bitter seed into its heart and said, "I guess you know what's going to happen then." "Yes, I do," said the bitter seed in a nasty tone. "I will grow into another tree." "What kind of tree?" asked Owl. "A tree that bears fruit," said the seed. "You're probably right," said Owl. "But what kind of fruit?" "Just fruit," answered the bitter seed. "What else is there?" Owl said, "Not just any fruit, but bitter fruit, because that is all that a bitter seed can produce." For a while, the bitter seed was very quiet. Then it walked over to the pond that was near the tree. It looked at its reflection in the water. For the first time, the bitter seed noticed how ugly the bitterness it carried had made it look. The bitter seed became sad, and tears began to fall from its eyes into the pond. The seed realized that the owl was right. So the bitter seed walked back to the tree, and in a gentle tone asked Owl, what could be done to remove this bitterness? Owl explained that bitterness comes from holding on to the hurts done to you. When you are hurt, you become angry. That anger lets you know something is bothering you. When you hold on to that anger, it then turns into bitterness. The bitterness then acts like a weed in a garden. When it is left there, it grows larger and larger, eventually ruining all of the good plants. Letting bitterness stay in our hearts also will allow it to grow, ruining any good feelings we may have. The bitter seed asked Owl, "How do I remove this bitterness?" Owl said, "The only way is to forgive those who hurt you." "How do I do that?" asked the bitter seed. Owl said, "You need to let go of the anger you have towards those who have hurt you. I know this is difficult to do, but it is the only way. You have to let those who have hurt you free. By forgiving them, you also will be free of the bitterness you hold in your heart." The bitter seed listened closely to Owl, realizing it had to decide what it wanted to grow into. As the bitter seed was leaving, it thanked Owl for his advice. On its journey to find its place to grow, the bitter seed began to think of the hurts it felt. One by one, the seed let go of them, forgiving those it needed to, especially those of its own family tree. Then a strange thing began to happen as the bitter seed continued to forgive. A heaviness left its heart, and a good feeling of freedom came in. The seed was walking by a mushroom, and on top was a ladybug that waved hello. This time the bitter seed gave a warm smile and waved back. Everyone the seed met along the way experienced a cheerful greeting. Now sometimes even the seed met up with someone who was in a bad mood, but it just let it go, remembering its lesson about forgiveness. When the seed finally reached its place to be planted, it had a smile that it could feel deep within its heart. As it jumped into the hole, the seed realized it wasn't bitter anymore. In time, that seed grew into a good tree. Which produced good fruit. And out of that good fruit came many good seeds. People young and old are no different. We also, like the seed in the story, carry around bitterness when we hold on to the hurts we've experienced from others. The good news is that we can be free of that bitterness if we are willing to forgive, as I will explain. Just like the seed, we have a choice of what we want to grow into. Be wise and choose forgiveness.